I've admitted that I have no idea what I'm doing and that this will not be exactly as, oh no, I'm gonna throw up in my mouth. Oh God, okay. Hi, I'm just a super serious little guy here to talk about the Real Housewives. Ding. I am currently unemployed, and with that unemployment comes a lot of TV watching, and with that TV watching comes a lot of Real Housewives. And even though I've done a lot of watching and I'm pretty deeply familiar with a couple of the franchises, I still feel like I'm popping my Housewives cherry every day, every single day. I do have to take breaks occasionally because sometimes it makes me stressed out, especially when the fights aren't funny. They are tedious, and when they're tedious, it's about a dog. I don't know if I can deal with that as a person sometimes, so sometimes I have to turn it off. But when I'm not turning it off, I am watching Housewives and I'm thinking about it a lot. And I think the more Housewives I watch, the better I get. And one day, if I watch enough Housewives, I will become the ultimate housewife. And I will take Andy Cohen's throne away from him. And I will become Andy Cohen. And then you will all have to bow down to me. Beyond my aspirations to strip Andy of his throne, I am really here to talk about the silly little phenomenon of how housewives call themselves self-made. There are some really egregious examples of this. I mean, just like there's egregious examples of other rich people in pop culture pretending that they didn't get a small loan of $1 million from their father for a business. And I think it's silly to ever do that. I think it's silly. I think silly is the best word, the best way to phrase it, because I don't think there is necessarily anything wrong with gaining support, with having family supports, financial support. People do that. They do that for people they love, and it's cool. It's cool that you have that opportunity, but I do think there's also nothing wrong with being transparent about that. I think personally, I would also not call myself like self-made, since I've had a lot of like help, and I'm sure I will continue to have help throughout my life. And I just think it's a very like bastardized term, especially when it's being used by women who have never worked a normal job in their life. It's kind of rough. So let's get into it. Basically, I originally came to this by a comment from my least favorite woman, Ramona Singer, from Real Housewives of New York, original cast member, Real Housewives of New York, and terror to the world. I don't know how else to explain her. Just a white woman terror unleashed upon the world. Nightmare. But she claims that she is self-made in something, and I'm not here to debunk specifically her. I'm just saying that that is what inspired me, because the self-made title does not come up when you're just chilling with these women. It comes up in a fight. It comes up when you have to defend yourself, when you have to like say why you're valuable, why you're better than someone else in the group, because you're self-made. And I really think it's funny because I don't know. Like, I don't know what rich people think that means and why it's so much better than like what they have, especially when so much of shows like Roni is focusing on the connections that you gained by maybe marrying someone, or by you being raised on the Upper East Side and going to private schools. It's not a big deal, but it becomes a very weird distinction where in a lot of the franchises, there are feelings that if there are women from older money or social status, that they do feel weird or look down upon women who don't come from that. That was kind of something talked about in the early seasons of Potomac, especially when Monique Samuels joined. The fact that like there are people that come from families with long histories in Potomac area or histories in general, but some of them don't. And what does it mean that you guys now are all sharing space together on this TV show, and you guys are now friends, and all of a sudden you're not better than anybody else? because they have more houses than you do, even though you think you have some like manners over them. I think it's really interesting. I'm just going to keep saying that I think it's interesting. But one of the best parts of Real Housewives is the fact that the housewives have a lot of zany business adventures. Wait. Oh my God, where is it? Okay, I have Karen Huger's La Dame set of like room spray, the candle, and the incense. Oh my God, I cannot find it. Sorry, Karen. Oh my God, it's right here. I'm stupid. Sorry, Karen. Here, La Dame, right there. So I am a fan. And there's always drama about release and like, is it actually a product? And I would say probably for most of them, you're going to keep what is your business off of the show if it's majorly profitable. When you're a silly little rich lady, it's fun to bring up things when they're still in the concept phase versus when they're done. But beyond like the silly intricacies of the fact that a lot of the women like to claim to be business women, I think it's partially because a lot of them have previously been leveled with accusations that they're like gold diggers because they are marrying men with wealth at different times. That it's like a way to reaffirm that you belong in a space because you have done something, when like I do think there's something to be said that like if they're housewives, if they're falling under the title of housewife, they may be performing labor that women often do in houses, and that's usually discounted, and that they can't assert that as their place anymore, or that is equally valuable to the businesses that their husbands have, which is, I think, a direct response to probably the sexism that they have received throughout their lives. There's a desire to come off as like authentic or genuine in these that I think also the self-made title tries to reach at. And in some franchises, you can see it more than others. And sometimes genuine means unhinged and unwell behavior. As someone who started by watching like Potomac and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, I was really surprised to see how frequently the Roni ladies get like blackout drunk on TV and fight each other. Like, it's pretty entertaining, but it is definitely something where women who, Ramona, talk shit about like other people who they view as below them are pretty consistently behaving poorly on TV and using some of these like monikers of self-made or whatever to justify their behavior as okay, or that they deserve these things. And I think that's also part of it. We always have to reckon with deservingness, with things like, I don't think there's easy ways to sometimes reckon the fact that some people are born with a lot and some people are born with so much less, and a lot of that also is impacted by structural factors. It's not just like I'm born into this family, but it's also like racial and class barriers to things as well. And so I think that is a real thing that people like think about, and I think that is something that like kind of manifests in this, even though I think it's an easy way to consistently tell yourself that you deserve things because you've earned it, even if you haven't earned it. I think there's really easy ways to categorize it as earning it, and I think it's like a hard thing to navigate and negotiate, and I don't think these women are like the pinnacle of it, but I do think that like there's a striving, there's a desire to show yourself as deserving of the wealth, or reaffirming to yourself that you're constantly deserving things that are better than other people, or that's why you're better than the women you're fighting with all the time. She's just a dumb bitch who like married some guy and you're self-made. I think it's just like you cannot discount the amount that some of these women, who are usually the loudest and the only ones claiming to be self-made are getting you to believe a narrative about them and believe that they also deserve these things, and that it's okay that other people don't have them, or that, they're doing bad things or whatever because they deserve it because they're self-made. And I do think you can't ignore the fact that that probably does have a lot to do with like gender in their situations, and the fact that a lot of these women have received critiques, I'm sure, publicly and both personally, that they're gold diggers or things like that, and that the only way to kind of escape that is to establish that like I did have a business beforehand, and the fact that like as a woman your accomplishments are usually going to be eclipsed by like your marriage and like your children, and especially if you're like marrying up or you're marrying someone with significant influence. So I think some of it is sometimes a way to like re-establish identity in some of these scenarios, and also establish this narrative that like I deserve these things, and like you guys can't call me a gold digger because I've worked for it. And I think that gold digger is very obviously like a very gendered and misogynistic term, and like also, who are you to judge what's going on in someone's marriage? It's totally not unheard of for partners to financially like support each other and things like that. I don't think like that's anyone's place really to talk about like with serious conviction what is going on in a marriage, what drew two people to each other, whatever. Also, I'd like to say that there are probably a lot of gross old men who are just happy to have a person living with them who cares about them. And I'm going to be honest, it's a fair exchange then. Cute. Housewives is very funny, it's very silly, but it is also not existing in a world where there are not other things going on. So the evoking of this title as self-made can be reflective of a lot of other things. I think it's some of these things that take the normal viewer out of the experience if they're not just going to accept the narrative that they're being given by the person on the show. And it really, I think, loses reliability with an audience if you're, especially in times right now where we're in a recession and food is expensive and gas is expensive and private planes are a huge source of carbon emissions, which is killing the planet and us. Like, all those things are happening in the same time that these women are claiming to be self-made or having silly business ventures, and their world gets to kind of remain small sometimes, depending on what is going on. Their world gets to remain pretty small, and the fact that I think sometimes the reaction generated to the word self-made is a lot harsher than I think they would estimate. Like, I don't need another reason to hate Ramona. I really don't. She gives me enough. But the more I think about this, the more I go, boo, I hate Ramona. Especially when you look at other people who are not claiming the title of self-made, but are willingly sharing their hardships, their personal experiences, or are humble and recognize that they've come really far from where they started, and they don't need to brag about it because they are comfortably sitting with their own success. I think that's also kind of what it comes down to, is the comfortably sitting with my own success, knowing how much I've worked. Like, I don't think anyone has to tell Candy from Real Housewives of Atlanta, hey Candy, did you know you're really talented? At this point in time, she has helped write songs that have won Grammys, that have been huge pop hits before she was on the show at all. She has her own singing career, like those things. Like, people don't need to tell her that. And similarly, like, I think also it gives you an excuse to pretend that you're high and mighty, that you're relatable, whatever, if you are claiming self-made and you're not self-made. But I do think, like anything else in Housewives, it is another thing to use as psychological warfare against your opponents in your franchise. And so I don't really think any of this is that important. It's really just thoughts on thoughts about what reality TV means to me. So I hope that if this at all made any sense to you, that you liked it, that you had a good time, and I hope that you also hate Ramona, and that, I guess, let me know if you also have La Dame. I kind of like it. I think it actually smells good. It is Old Lady. It's like it's a mature scent, but I love it. Thank you, Karen.